Hi, welcome to Book World of Grace Creek. I'm author CJ Peterson. Over here is my co-host, author Michael Scott Clifton. Welcome. Today we have a special guest, author Peter F. Crowley. His genre is short fiction. We'll get to him in just a minute. Before we do so, Mike, how was your week?
It's been busy, and that's good because for a change, it's busy doing stuff I want to do instead of putting out fires and things like that. So, uh, Memorial Day, we had the family over, and had my daughter, son-in-law, sister-in-law, and brother-in-law, and our 3-year-old grandson. And I'm a gardener. For those who follow me, I like to grow things, flowers. Have a big vegetable garden, and my grandson Jace, who's again 3 years old, I saved a little patch of my potatoes for him to help me dig up, and so he helped me harvest some potatoes on Monday, and had a really good time with that. And family time's good. And here in East Texas, we have had very much an unusual spring and I guess entry into early summer. Lots and lots and lots of rain and not so good weather, although not nearly as bad, CJ, as perhaps up your way or the poor folks around Houston. My next book event will be next Thursday, the Longview Art Walk. It's a little early this year. They normally have it in July, but they're having the art walk in June this year because they're hoping that the weather will be a little nicer, not so hot, and a lot of outside vendors. It's around here in July. It's can get miserable. So that'll be from 5 to 8. It's in the historic downtown area in Longview. And as usual, I'll be in the Vera Bank lobby and also be joined by some fellow authors. Know for sure Patty Wiseman will be there. Nancy Hudgens, who writes under the pen name Dana Wayne, might be there as also. It's always a good time to visit with them and sell some books.
Awesome. For those sci-fi geeks out there, anybody who watches Stargate, as I said, whoever has the Madrona Touchstone, please get it over to Cheyenne Mountain. They need to get that sucker back and get it out of here now. For those Stargate people, you will understand that. It has to do with weather for those who don't understand that. And it's being messed with. It needs to go away. The weather has been terrible. We had to actually not do my other podcast yesterday because my co-host is down in Texas. We're having some very scary weather. The winds were terrible down there, especially down in the Houston area. There was actually a couple of deaths due to it because it was so bad. My next event will actually be down in Lufkin. We're going to be doing the Piney Woods Comic Con down in Lufkin on the 17th and 18th of August. Super excited. I know that some of the guests that have currently been announced was Carla Perez, who was one of the evil people from Power Rangers, but she's a super sweet lady. I know that Kevin Sorbo has now been announced. And I also know that Chuck Huber, voice actor, amazing guy who just had a baby, congratulations, will also be there. I do know some of the other guests, but I cannot tell. I just happen to know that they will be amazing people, so you must come if you're in the area or close to the area. If not, make sure to make plans because you must be there. It will be in Lufkin, called the Piney Woods Comic Con. You can find out more about it at pineywoodskomiccon.com. And I do believe Mr. Mike Clifton will also be there. So make sure to come as you can get his books. But today we have special guest Peter F. Crowley, who also you could find his stuff at peterfcrowleyauthor.com. Peter, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, CJ and Mike.
So for those who don't know anything about you, could you mind telling them a little bit about you and your work?
Sure. I'm kind of a author of many styles and also many ways to write. So like I write poetry, op-eds, essays, sometimes academic articles, short fiction, and I'm trying to write a couple of novels. Like they're on the kind of back burner or front burner. Actually, one of them's on the front burner. And within those different kinds of literature, I write all over the place. Kind of some are straightforward. My first attempt at a novel was relatively straightforward, but it also had a mysterious character who just appeared. And it was almost like you weren't sure if it was an imaginary friend or it's kind of who actually saw this woman besides the main character. And then right now I'm trying to finish up right now it's a novella, but I hope to make it a novel just a kind of straightforward story about someone who wins the Mega Bucks or Mega Millions, it is, I believe, and what happens after that. So
Interesting.
Wow.
So I know you said that one of them's kind of done in the done final type stages.
I think so, yeah.
One's kind of like in the, final draft type thing, but you're kind of having to start to weed through it sort of idea. But you have quite a few short stories. How many of those do you have? I was kind of skimming through them on your website.
Oh, it's hard to say. Like probably like that are published, probably 50 or 60, and then within that the book That Night and Other Stories, I think there's a little bit less, probably like 30, 25 or 30. They're relatively short. They're not like I know like Ben Marcus. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. His short stories are pretty long, and maybe within a short story book there are like 5. Within mine, they're shorter. They're usually like 2 to maybe 8 pages,
Mhm.
and they go pretty quick, I think, and so it's a good thing for I guess the reader if you like what you're reading, you can
So
keep
do you
going.
have them? Do
Stop.
you have them like in one big book, or do you have them?
Compilation. Yeah.
It's fairly. I mean, it's not that big. It's more like 200 pages of yeah, not
Just like a
crazy.
bunch. So you have like a compilation of a bunch of short
Compilation.
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and That Night and Other Stories. Yeah.
Got
Is
it.
there
Cool.
is there a title to that? Your compilation? Is there a title to your short stories? Your compilation
Yes.
of short stories?
Yeah, it's called That Night and Other Stories. And That Night is one of the stories within it. It's I thought it was probably the most popular one, but I think people have, as I've read from various pieces, people have gravitated towards a kind of ghost story called The Initials. So you never know, right? When you write something, what you
Right.
like is different from what other people may like.
Well, you sound like me. I'm kind of a multi-genre author as well.
So you,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so there are usually two types of authors, which we like to ask. There's usually planners or pantsers. Mike and I
Mm,
are both pantsers, which is basically you sit down and write by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
Which one are you?
that's a good question. Think I think when you're writing a novel, you have to plan more, right?
No, we're
A li-
pantsers.
In my mind, I have to do that more.
I
Like I have to.
literally sit down and type. That's it.
Oh, okay,
No,
that's
that's
cool.
what I do. There's actually a friend of mine that we just had on here a few months ago actually. He's like a pantser to the nth degree in novels. He will write chapter like 9, then 2,
Yeah.
then yeah, I don't know how he does it. And
Oh
he somehow makes it all
no.
Is he
I
good
don't
at
know
putting
how
puzzles together? I
I
guess
don't
I
know how
don't
he does it. And he somehow makes it all come together. And I'm like, "Oh, that gives me as a pantser hives."
Yeah. Well, it's a little. When you say pantser, of course, it's to the degree.
Mhm.
But generally, with short stories, I found that it's you have an idea, and the idea may be stretched to 3 to 5 or 8 pages. But when you write a novel, as speaking as a pantser, as CJ has said, I think you do have I think to a point you do have a little bit, and I'm speaking more of myself. You have a general idea of your story, you have general idea of your characters, a general idea of maybe the beginning and the ending, but it's all fluid.
Mm,
It's not set in stone.
I
But I
have a
will say,
vague idea,
yeah.
like really, really vague.
But I will say that the guest we had on that CJ's talking about, I've never heard of anybody that did it that way. I don't know how he does it. He gets all his ideas go from instead of going logically from chapter 1 to 2 to 3, etc. Well, here's chapter 8. I'm going to write that, and then here's chapter 20, and here's chapter 15, and somehow he comes back and plugs them in. And like I said, I'm with CJ. I don't know how in the world he does that.
I could never do that.
Answers with a
Yeah,
pet.
I write them chronologically. I never fully know how they're gonna end.
Yeah.
I just keep like a running list of my characters. But like I have an idea for my main character is, and then the other characters just kind of come along as the story goes.
Can I ask you, Peter? Let me ask you this. So, I don't like to write short stories. Let's be upfront and honest with you, okay? But
That's
I
fine.
started out writing short stories, and I don't know if you agree with this or not. But one of the things that I found in the process of writing short stories is that it does make you a better writer, and it does help to make you better prepared to write even a full length novel. And with me, and I don't know if I can't speak for others, but it forced me to take my ideas or idea and parse it down into a shorter uh, format, so that what might have taken a paragraph, I'm trying to try to squeeze into a sentence, or what might have taken a page, I'm going to try to squeeze into a paragraph. And I do feel like writing short stories has made me a better author. And my experience has been with others, authors that have been around who have done short stories as well. I think it's helped them to be better writers as well. Would you agree with that? Since you're saying you're working on a novel, as a has writing short stories helped make you a better writer?
It's a good question. I mean, I think in theory it should. I don't know if it has, but because you need like the ingredients of a novel or like within what is it, like 500 character or 500 words or maybe even 1500 words. So you need everything there, and you're doing it so often, and you review it more often because it's quicker to edit. How many times can you reread your own novel? I mean, just the time it takes. So it takes a while, but you can. I've reread so many of my short stories, like, and fixed them and like or redone them even, and so you really kind of get on top of them, and you kind of really get inside them, and I think you're right. I think probably right. I don't know if it's made me a better one, but I think in general, I think it does make you a better writer because you can analyze it more, and by analyzing it more, you can bring that whatever's learned from that to your novel writing.
I totally agree. I mean, I went from novels to then we had to write the anthologies for like Texas
Mhm.
Sisters Press. And I went from like these, you know, 250 to 400 page novels down to 300 or 3,500 to 7,500 word stories. And, you had to cut the fluff out.
Yep.
There was absolutely no, you had to go straight to the meat.
Right.
So then when I went from that to writing then the novels themselves, I could actually write a 250 word stand or 250 page standalone, which I couldn't do before.
Hmm.
And I could get the meat in there. And to me, that put out a much better story by doing that. So since you started with the short stories, when you actually go to write your novel, you're going to be able to put a lot more meat in there, but you might actually be able to dive more into the character because you're used to writing the short stories. You can dive more into there because you're not used to putting fluff in it almost.
I hope that's true. We'll see.
You're kind of almost doing the reverse.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think if I started from like kind of bare bones, kind of even flash fiction, and a little longer than flash fiction, short stories, and it does help you develop as a writer, I believe.
Hmm. Well, and then with your poetry, you're kind of used to pace.
Mm. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
kind of puts like a different spin on things too.
Yeah, it. But the only thing with both of these poetry and short stories, the first time I tried to write a novel, and I still haven't had one published, um, I was just all over the place. I was totally a pantser, like 100% pantser. Like, and I had an editor look at it, and she was like, "What? Where? There's no structure whatsoever. Like, what is this? Like, because there's all like time was all like disjointed, and the things lined up in my mind, but they like the reader would just be like, "What? Like, this is just like Jackson Pollock, like on with words or something." It's just like, what are you doing?
You still do need that little bit of continuity in there.
Yeah,
Yes.
there was no arc. There was no cohesive story. I mean, there would be, but like you'd have to piece together everything in your own mind, which a reader shouldn't have to do.
Mm-mm. You
Well,
do still got to take them on that journey.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think that short stories tend to force you to focus. If that's the point that your editor was trying to get across, it does tend you to have to be more focused because you've only got what 1,500, 500 to 1,500 words maybe to work with, or however long the word count is, and that's like I said, I myself, I've written short stories. I've won some short story awards, but I've never really enjoyed it. But I, um, but I know it's helped me personally as a writer because it's a different type of writing, but I strongly believe that it does help you to write full length novels
Mhm.
because it makes you much more disciplined. And I don't know, there's the critique groups I belong to down through the years. One of the things I've noticed, the most common mistakes that I've seen, which included me back in the day, is you already have a sentence that's strong, you already have a passage that's powerful, and you try to make it better. And in so doing, you weaken it when you already have a good product right there before you. And I think that when you write short stories, that kind of enforces that type of discipline on you.
Well, and it's kind of frustrating too, but I mean, it would probably help you definitely when you go to write the back of the book summaries and stuff because you're so used to writing everything so condensed anyway.
Right, right.
When you go to write your novel's summaries, it's probably going to be easier, I would almost think, for you.
Oh, yeah. Definitely helps you. I mean, blurbs and short descriptions are everybody's kryptonite when it comes to novels.
That will probably help you, though, I would think.
Yeah, the the most hated words are must be so many characters, to get your yeah. What does that mean? It means 150 words or less. Well, I can't do it then. Well, you're going to have to learn how. So the blurbs are not my strength. Well, Peter, what you don't? I think we asked you before the show started. We were talking to you. You're multi-genre, cross-genre. You don't really, your short stories aren't really in, say, science fiction, fantasy, historical fiction. You kind of write all over the place. Would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, I guess the safe thing to say is just literary fiction,
Right.
which is all encompassing, like you were kind of alluding.
All of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, but more surreal. I would say it's more surreal, straightforward, kind of even simplistic. Some of them are just like cut and dry, I think, but kind of getting the weight of something, like the weight of a mother-daughter relationship, or someone getting dumped at a restaurant, something like that, or when it's a straightforward one.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do try to. I don't really try to write all over the place. It's just kind of I sit down to write, and in short stories, I'm definitely a pantser. Like I just, unlike novels, I think I definitely go where my typewriter takes me.
So where do you get all your ideas? Because you said there were 50 of them, 50-ish.
I approximately, yeah. Just my life and ideas that I talk to someone and it kind of connects to an idea, some other idea I read about or I heard about or I thought about. This is the free flow of ideas and associations. Kind of just let it all go and kind of bring it back when you have a coffee or at the typewriter, and then kind of just your hands kind of do the work, and then you catch up.
So you said you have two novels. One's kind of a little bit closer to the front than the other. Do we get any hints onto what that one may be?
Yeah, the front one is I've been working on that since like I think 2018 or 19, and I haven't looked at it for about a year probably. Besides like talking to potential like publishers about it, but yeah, it was more like I think everyone's first novel is more like a little autobiographical, and at first I think my first draft was like 100% autobiographical, and my editor was like, "Just step away, like this is not a memoir unless you want it to be a memoir," and I'm like, "I don't want it to be one," so I stepped away more. Because it was too close to everything that happened in my life, which was not it's not like a traumatic life, but I everyone's life is interesting, I think. But I stepped away and I listened. I did heed her advice, uh, and now it's definitely more fictional. But it's kind of a coming of age young man. But before that, it's his childhood, and then all of a sudden, fast forward to his corporate life, and but all throughout that time, as I kind of sort of mentioned earlier, this woman is kind of there, and no one else can see her. It's kind of an imaginary friend almost, but it's almost like his personified subconscious there. And when he's doing all these things that he's supposed to do, she's always when he actually doesn't want to. She's like the symbol of like, no, I don't like you know you don't actually want to do this again. You don't want to do your homework, or you don't want to like your father wanted you to play baseball forever. Like you don't want to do that. Like it's
So is
time
she
to like
really real or is she not real?
no, she's not. She's just in his head.
Is he schizophrenic or is it?
No, it's more like no, that's a good question. It ties into his just for when he's sick as a child. I think he has a dream about her once, and then she's almost like a dream figure who's there like in the to the reader she's there as a person, but like to him she's there as a figment of his imagination, and I think he kind of understands that, but it's not explicitly said.
Got
Wow.
it.
Wow. Well, it doesn't sound like you ever suffer from the dreaded writer's block.
Well, I have a 3-year-old, so when I have a chance to write, I run down and like downstairs in my basement right here, and I haven't had a block in a while. But I think before that, like 4 years before my wife was pregnant with like she had really a lot of stomach sickness, so I was like always helping her. But before that, 4 years ago, about I had plenty of blocks, like I think everyone does. But just now that I don't have the chance so much, it's like I'm so ready to write,
Sort of like,
I always had the opposite problem where I had like stories kind of like compiling on top of other stories and I just had to get like partial ideas out. Especially if I'm in the middle of a story and then there's another story that's like, oh hey, I'm over here, you need to write me now.
sounds
That's
like
my
you kind of you had to like put it aside for a while to deal with life, and
um,
all of a sudden you've got these like box cars on a train there. You've got them lined up and you've got them ready to start moving again.
I guess kind of. And though, like I think it's like I have once a week to write, basically. And any other time I can squeeze in for like editing or stuff I've already written. So like I don't plan like when I'm not writing usually, but occasionally I do. But I think I'm just so I don't know. I feel like somehow like I started writing when I was 15, so I think the natural like way to live is to like express yourself through writing. And if I
Okay.
don't have that, life doesn't really feel right. So I feel like that's why I don't really have a block, even though it could be garbage, it could be okay, it could be good when I actually write, but it's just like I have it ready, whatever it
so
may be.
so do you have them like up individually and then some compiled or are they all just compiled into certain ones? How do you have them up?
Oh, for the short stories,
Hmm.
um, for the book, it was I wrote them at this is my first submission to like for short stories, and it's kind of almost an anthology because it's from all over the place. Um,
Mhm.
so I kind of wrote them throughout probably like the last since 2016 to when it was accepted for publication in 2023, and just kind of like whatever I wrote there, I thought was the most publishable and probably best. I kind of just put it in that kind of compendium.
So they're all in one.
Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
I mean, though, like there's plenty more that aren't there enough written since, or that I didn't feel like made it, but maybe should have, or I don't know.
Mm. Mm.
Gotcha. Well,
Wow.
no worries. So do you have any advice of somebody who may want to just kind of dip their toe into the writing world, kind of maybe want to start with some short stories to kind of see how they do with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing for writers to do is to get time and to carve out time from their busy lives of
Right.
whatever they're doing. That's the first thing, and then because that's the hardest. I think once you can sit down and actually like and give yourself a half hour or an hour just to sit there in front of your laptop or your typewriter or your notebook, whatever you use, and just to sit there and just let ideas pass over you, kind of, and let or if you have a previous idea you thought about, kind of let maybe jump on that quicker, but just and then whatever's the most powerful idea, just kind of go with it and kind of start writing. Like be a pantser for short stories, I would say definitely. That's my advice for that for short stories. For novels, I got burned by my editor of being a pantser. I think that's why I've avoided being a pantser for the second endeavor I took with that novel.
Yeah,
Got it.
the water's fine, Peter. Come on back in. Yeah, the panther. they're
You're
great.
welcome on the pantser side,
Right,
regardless.
that's right.
Well, I'll stick with you guys for short stories and poetry, but no.
Definitely.
Novels, I
It's
don't know.
not bad. Us pantsers aren't a bad crew for novels,
It's
too.
fun
Nope.
though. I mean, because then you can read it after, and you're like, sometimes like it's like, oh, this is so interesting because it's like it's kind of it could be a random thought that you kind of pushed into a story or random idea. That's when it's really
There you
fun.
go. Well, it's fun. Like I said, I enjoy it because I don't know how my stories are going to end. That's
Yeah.
why I like doing them.
Yeah.
So next, thank you so much for joining us. For those who want to know more about Peter Crowley, you can check out his website at peterfcrowleyauthor.com. So for those who are listening, you can find him at PETER, the letter F, CROWLEYAUTHOR.com. Next week, we're going to have Whit McClendon. His genre is epic and urban fantasy. Make sure to turn in next week to listen to him. Um, any last words you want to add? We have a few minutes left.
Well, no, I just want to say thank you, Mike and CJ, very much for having me on. I had a great time.
Well, I know you have a lot of other things. I know that we talked a little bit about your short story. We know that we have a few minutes left, so I know we talked about a little bit about your poetry. Are those in any books?
Yeah, I have two poetry books one's called Those Who Hold Up the Earth. That was the first one, published in 2020. And then one was published the same week as my short story collection was published back in October 13th, actually. And it's called Empire's End. It's a little
Okay.
darker.
End.
It was written during the pandemic and a little
Okay.
darker than Those Who Hold Up the Earth.
And then you said you had some professional publications.
Yeah, I have some academic stuff on Northern Ireland and Israel Palestine stuff.
Oh, cool.
What else? The Syrian Civil War as well. I took my master's in global studies, conflict resolution, and it was from like stuff I wrote there and kind of tweaked a little bit to get it in an academic journal.
Well, very cool. Well, definitely do not steer clear of being a pantser when it comes to writing. You can
I'll try it.
try it. You might like it.
Yeah, don't change your style of writing. If that's the way you write, that's the way you write.
Writing is therapeutic regardless of however you choose to do it, whether it's being a planner, a pantser, or a hybrid of sorts.
It's as necessary as food.
That's
Definitely.
right.
Either way, those out there, please make sure to go ahead and just take a few minutes each day to write. If you feel the need to write, the story is in you and needs to get out of you. Make sure to come back next week, same time, same place. We're going to have Whit McClendon. So make sure to tune in. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.